Oh my gosh.
Very good.
Okay, a couple of general bits of conduct I want to cover. Please mute yourself. Keep your microphones on mute unless you're speaking so that we can avoid the feedback and a lot of strange noise that otherwise tends to overwhelm the meeting. I don't think it's necessary to say this, but I say it anyway. Please be respectful when we talk to one another. Don't try to put anybody down or make a point. This is not a debate. We are here really to spread information. If you want to be recognized, use the raise hand feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. And I think we have everyone's full name here. If for some reason you're using a cute name like Polly's iPad, please tell us who you are so we can keep track of it when we are running the meeting. First of all, I'd like us to all introduce ourselves. My name is Ed Gronke. I live on Rynearson. Jane? Yeah.
Sorry about that. My name is Jane Morrison and I live on Jennings Avenue.
Linda?
Okay, my name is Pat Reinert and I live on Jennings Avenue. I'm not Patry, I'm Pat Reinert, but anyway.
And I'm Linda Newman and I live on River Road at the north end of our area.
Sarah?
Sarah Jo Chaplin, I'm the general manager at Oak Lodge Water Services.
Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Williams. I'm a 36-year resident of Jennings Lodge, and I serve as a director at Oak Lodge Water Services, and I'm the liaison to the Jennings Lodge Community Planning Organization.
Lisa? You're muted, Lisa.
It was a great presentation. You're muted.
Push the space bar, Lisa. The space bar.
No, still muted. Why don't we come back to her when she figures it out? There you go.
Okay, I'm Lisa Bentley. I live on River Drive. I've been in Jennings Lodge area since 1963. Don't ask how old I am.
Yeah.
Kay Weaver?
I'm Kay Weaver and I live on Cottonwood at the foot of Meldrum, and I've been here for a long time, I think 41 years.
Wow.
Alexa?
Hey there, my name is Alexa. I'm a resident in Jennings Lodge. I'm also here tonight as the Oak Lodge Water Services Outreach and Communication Specialist.
Woohoo.
Paul?
Hi, I live on Southeast Meldrum Avenue and am one of the 4 currently directors at Oak Lodge Water Services. And there actually is a second person with me. My wife Leanna is in on this call as well.
And I bet your last name is Gornick.
That's correct.
Craig? Craig Winnison.
Sorry, Missouri. I'm on River in Meldrum.
Grover.
Hi, I'm Grover, and I have lived in Jennings Lodge since 1991, and I am a proud member of Jennings Lodge and lots of other communities that support our local community.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, Steve Berliner. We live on Hall Avenue on the historic Finley Estate, which we've had since 2007. So it's our 15th year, and living on site our 12th year.
Virginia.
Hi, am I muted or can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Virginia Foster, and I live off of Rainierson Road, longtime resident.
See, Grover, we've already gotten you. Karen,
Karen Bjorklund, lived in Oak Lodge since 1990.
Muccieri? Do I have it right? Muciri.
Didn't he introduce himself?
Yeah, he already introduced himself, Ed.
Okay. I have 5 people in the waiting room, and I can't figure out how to let them in.
We've got Anita here. This is Blackmore.
Ed, why don't you make Jane a co-host so she can let people in while you're leading the meeting?
Yeah, I got strict words from my wife. Let her in. Sorry.
I'm Anita Blackmore, by the way, and I'm expanding my horizons. I live in Oak Grove. I know the notorious Grover Bornfield quite well, and also have been interacting some with Karen and Jane, and sometimes with Steve Berliner.
Jane, you're now a co-host, so can you see if you can let the rest of those people in?
I will look. Interesting. I'm not seeing the waiting room.
I've got 5 people entered the waiting room.
Jane is not listed as a co-host yet, Ed, on the participant list.
Yeah.
I listed her once, I'll do it again. Do you want to make Jane Morrison? Yes, I said that before.
Okay. I'm admitting Alan Rogalin, Jan Carruthers, Louise Anderson, and Virginia Foster again.
Did slip out.
Well, I think we better get moving.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, treasurer. Please mute yourself unless you're talking, please. We have the treasurer's report, Pat.
Oh, treasury report, we have, should I say it? Yes? $2,655.84. $2,655.84.
Thank you very much. We have the minutes of the December 7th meeting, which I believe were sent out to everyone. Does anyone have any changes to make to those minutes? I don't see any or hear any. We will consider the minutes approved. Let's go on to our first item tonight, which is the Oak Lodge Water Services. Who's going to do the presenting?
Paul and I are going to share it. I'll go first. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the Jennings Lodge CPO for allowing us to come tonight and make this presentation. Let's go ahead and put the first slide up. Alexa, please.
It's up already.
There we go. All right. I want to start out by talking about our commitments to our customers. We provide essential water services to this community. We're committed to protecting public health, providing excellent customer service, making smart investments and keeping rates affordable, and keeping our streams and rivers clean. These commitments are and will continue to be at the core of everything we do.
I'm sorry to interrupt you just for a second. Steve, you had your hand up. Is there something important you wanted to say?
Oh, I missed Greg introducing himself, and I was worrying about that. Did we get that? You're muted, Greg.
I'll real quick. I'm from Oak Lodge, CERT, and we've got several members of our CERT down in your area there, and we'd like to do some additional training also partnered with Oak Lodge Water for doing emergency water filters, and there are a couple emergency water filters in your neighborhoods down in Jennings Lodge also. And sorry to interrupt the Oak Lodge Water presentation.
Yeah, my fault. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I will ask, so we try to keep questions till the end of the presentation too. There's a lot of information to cover. All right, this is your district board of directors. We all serve 4-year terms. We volunteer our time providing service to the community. None of us are compensated. The recruitment for the open board position that was occupied by Mark Knudsen closed at 5 p.m. last night. We do have a couple of candidates that are interested in that spot. We'll be interviewing them in a special meeting on Wednesday, March 30th. You can check our website for details if you'd like to attend the meeting and listen to the candidates and hear what they have to say. The blue outline is our boundary area. To the north, you can see the city of Milwaukee. To the south, you can see the city of Gladstone. Then across the Willamette River, you can see the cities of Lake Oswego and Westland. The district serves mostly the unincorporated area in Clackamas County, with some overlap within the cities of Milwaukee and Gladstone. We serve both homes and businesses, providing services to nearly 29,000 customers. Since 2017, Oak Lodge Water Services has been one district providing 3 services. We deliver safe and reliable drinking water from the Clackamas River to our customers. We collect wastewater from homes and businesses, treat it, and return it to the Willamette River. And we also protect the water quality of local streams and rivers. And now I'd like to pass the presentation to Director Paul Gornick to give an authority process update.
Hello all. So what is an authority and how is that different from what we are today? An authority is just a different version of a special district under Oregon law. And in this case, an authority would replace the existing district. It would not change the services we provide. And the most important change would be securing the district's boundary area. And the question is, why do we want to reorganize as an authority? One thing that's really resonated with people is our commitment to preserving the infrastructure investments that we've made and that you have paid for, and to better position ourselves to make future investments in our systems. One of the questions is, why do this now? One of the reasons to do so is to stabilize our customer base. We recently finished our water system master plan, and we're in the midst of updating our sewer system master plan. Those plans make certain assumptions about our service territory and the number of customers we have. The time to ensure a stable revenue structure is at the front end of those plans. We'll be making large capital investments based on our water system master plan, which identifies the greatest needs and prioritizes those investments. Becoming an authority will ensure that the benefit of those investments stay with the customers who had funded them in the past and also those on a go-forward basis. It will create certainty in our boundaries and stabilization for our customers. There will be a financial benefit to our customers and will reduce uncertainties and borrowing costs going forward. So what would this mean for our customers? The change would solidify the district's boundary area so that customers will continue to receive reliable drinking water, wastewater services, and watershed protection services at rates based solely on the cost of service. Our operation would stay the same. We'd be providing the same services to the same customers with the same staff. We'd continue using cost of service rate making, and decision making would continue to be guided by a customer elected board. So what steps have been taken so far? Forming an authority is a complex multi-step process. And the conversation for this began sometime back with multiple board, along with customer and community initiated conversations. Over the past year, both the Milwaukee and Gladstone City Councils adopted resolutions in support of the district becoming an authority. And last fall, 2 of our board members met with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss the authority formation process. We have hosted so far 2 town hall-like presentations in January, which we called community conversations, so that anyone who still had questions could ask us directly. Those conversations, if you have not seen them, are still available to watch on the district's YouTube channel, which I believe you can access via our website. Alexa can also send Ed the link to share with you for that YouTube channel. And hopefully you can do that in the chat right now. She'll paste the link into the chat. So 2 of our board of directors then went to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners to request that they initiate proceedings for authority formation. Oak Lodge has to go through the county because there's no statutory process to convert to an authority without the county's involvement. Which leads us to what's next and how can you get involved? The Clackamas County Board of Commissioners have started the process, which means we will have a first public hearing on Thursday, April 14th at 10 a.m. Since the process is run by the county will be providing the information on how to attend that hearing on their website. The district will be mailing all of our customers that information as well on how to attend public hearing number 1. The information will also be shared on our website via social media and our email newsletter. There will be a second public hearing, but to be arranged. And when we know when that is, the district will also get that information to our customers. So how can customers stay informed? We're committed to keeping our customers informed about potential changes and opportunities to provide input. To stay up to date about that process and all district news, we encourage you to subscribe to our email newsletter or follow us on social media. And if you know someone interested in this topic who wasn't able to attend tonight, please have them visit our website. We have a dedicated web page with information on the authority process. So, if you still have questions, please post them in the chat now.
Are there any questions? Does anyone want to raise a hand and ask a question? Well, you seem you gave such a thorough presentation, no one asked any questions.
Yeah. So if anyone does have questions, please feel free to email Alexa, your outreach and communications specialist at the district, and her contact information was on the screen and should be posted in the chat. And thank you all very much for hearing us tonight. And I see that we have Jane has a question.
Yeah, and I can't raise my hand as a co-host, so I was typing into the chat some questions, but I'm happy to just give them to you verbally, if that's okay. I mean, I'm familiar with like water departments that are part of a city, you know, where you've got an integrated administration where, you know, the transportation people are talking to the water people and they're talking to the, you know, planning people, et cetera, et cetera. So with an authority, what would be the effect? You know, how would it be better if some or all of the unincorporated area that we know of Oak Lodge and Jennings Lodge were be incorporated? And I understand that there's possibilities of smaller parts of this area being incorporated at some point, or maybe the whole Magilla. But what would be the benefits of having an authority versus a water department?
Well, one thing is that when a special district is encompassed by a city and becomes part of that city's bureaucracy, there can be additional layered costs that are applied on top of labor and materials to fund some of the non-revenue generating portions of a city. Kevin and I experienced this when we worked with the city of Portland, that certain portions of the city would apply, you know, a fixed percentage rate on top of our labor, and materials costs, and though that would funded some things that were outside of the purview of our particular bureaus. If we remained an authority, and we're not part of the city, those costs would not be placed on the authority's customers, who would ultimately have to pay increased rates due to that.
Are there examples of the opposite happening in other communities? I understand you both have like deep experience with the city of Portland.
I could take this, Paul.
Okay.
In 1984, the city of Portland entered into an agreement with Multnomah County to begin transferring jurisdiction that Multnomah County had always taken care of. Cawley, Rose City, Park Rose, some communities on the west side, they all had little water districts that served the communities. They had boards that were locally elected by the customers, and they did a pretty good job providing water services. Practically overnight, when the city took those water districts over, they began selling off their assets, their equipment, in some cases, their real estate that they owned. And they had to keep their employees. They were transferred for a year, with the exception of the general management staff, like general managers and such. They were sent to the unemployment line. So I can think right away of about 12 water districts that I saw cease to exist overnight, and see everything sold off, and everything that those communities had invested in those water districts became the general fund at the city of Portland. The money didn't even go back into those communities to pay for water improvements. It just went in the general fund to pay for police and firefighters and things like that. So that's the danger to your investment here.
Okay. I see that Jan has put a question in the chat, so she, I'm guessing, should go next, and I have a second question. Do you want to respond to Jan's question in the chat?
It's fundamentally what you just asked, Jane. So,
okay.
But is there anything else? It's like, why now? It sounds sort of like quick before something happens. So I'm just wondering, is there something that is about to happen?
This discussion began back before the merger, the consolidation occurred in 2017. There were members of the community and members of both boards at that time that thought we should have formed as a authority back then rather than staying in a special district. So this isn't something that's new. Thelma Hagenmuller has been trying for a very long time to get the district switched over to an authority. And I know that several board members, including people like Myron Martwick and others, were also working on those efforts. One of the dangers that we see is the city of Milwaukee was actually speaking with Metro about annexation. If part of our customers were to be annexed away to an existing city, that would raise the cost for everybody else that remains within the special district, because the money that they pay in rates is still going to need to be paid. There's just going to be fewer people paying into that pot. So that's a danger to everybody.
I would also say that part of it is we've been very focused on putting plans into place for the future. So the water plan is out 30 years, and we're in the process of doing that for sanitary, because a lot of the equipment, the pipes have a 100-year lifespan, and we've got a number of the pipes that are heading into the last 50 or 30 years of their life. So some of the things that were identified in the water master plan is that we really need to have access to a second source of water should anything happen to the river. So one of the projects was an intertie with Milwaukee, which has cost to it. Another thing that was very interesting is the rock, the ground within our district is an interesting mixture of really hard basalt, which won't do a whole lot during an earthquake, but then parts of the soil that will become almost liquid. And the main pipeline from the Water Commission runs through patches of soil that during an earthquake might liquefy. And so what is being identified as part of projects that we're looking at are projects that have an expense to them. And so it would be funded by a combination potentially of rates and borrowing. And the first thing that borrowing entities ask you is, what is the number of customers you will be serving? So trying to have that long distance out for planning is hard if you can't tell them what is the area, what are the customers we're going to be serving at that time, and then look at the length of investment for the pieces of equipment. So that's part of what we've been focused on, is that long distance planning.
Karen,
Thank you.
I have a question. Karen?
I actually have a question for Alexa, so I could go last at the end of this, and I see Grover has his hand up.
Go ahead, Grover. Grover, go ahead.
I'm working on it. Thank you. So I was curious, I just heard you talk about the possible annex with Milwaukee, but just annexing in general. How would someone who has their pipes through Oak Lodge Water Services and some annexation took place, how would you switch over without repiping the whole world?
Paul, you
So
want to try that one?
yeah, so if we were still at this, oh, you said Paul.
Oh, okay, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah. Go.
I was going to say that it's more difficult for our gravity pipes, that is sewer collection system, than it would be for the water system pipes that are under pressure. Terrain,
Okay.
yeah, terrain drives a lot of the way. It's the most economical to provide those two services. That being said, I'll let Sarah Jo.
But I was going to say the fundamental point that you were making is, depending upon where the annexation occurred, would that then mean that duplication of infrastructure might occur? But it is basically like a gravity for sanitary, and on the edges there are Milwaukee customers that we serve for Milwaukee, and there are our customers that they serve because of the way that it flows, but we have arrangements at the edge. But that is always a very interesting discussion. When you look at building a new house on a lot, there may be 4 different ways that pipes could come in, and what is the best way for pipes to come in is always a discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
So it'd be a mixed bag is what you're saying, depending on, and there's arrangements that are made across borders.
Yes, but
Okay.
if it was annexed into the city would need to make arrangements with us, or they would be wanting to take over that infrastructure, depending upon where it was.
Thank you.
Karen, you have a question, and I think Jane has a last question.
Mine is not on this subject, but it is to Alexa, so Jane should go next.
Okay. One of the things that we've heard over the years is the disconnect in stormwater management between Oak Lodge Water and Clackamas County. The fact that the county owns the culverts that go under the road, blah, 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 blah. Will this fix that?
It will begin to start addressing it. The board has already had discussions that we need to start doing more on stormwater, because that's what we need to be doing for our customers. The problem is that a lot of this stormwater stuff is very expensive. It involves pipes, facilities, things like that. And somebody has to pay for that. So we have a stormwater advisory committee that's reforming again. They're going to start meeting and start talking about this. The county commission, when our 2 board members went to speak with them the first time, made it very clear that something needs to change with the stormwater problem. And our board, I mean, the 4 of us have all agreed that we want to be part of the solution, and we're willing to start working towards that. Right now, we have some projects that we're doing in conjunction with the county We paid for an engineering study to occur down on Boardman at the trolley trail that always floods. And we've commissioned and have paid for an engineering study to figure out how we can fix that. And the county's already agreed to go in with us on the money and take care of that problem there. You know, I've told them all along, I walked that trolley trail for a long time and I don't like getting my feet wet in the winter. And there's really no reason for it. We can address things like that and fix it. So I think this current board is committed to trying to do something with stormwater. What we have to figure out is the financial end of it and how we pay for what we do.
And I think part of the complexity that Kevin speaks to, particularly like at Boardman and Arista, part of the solution is probably in private property hands, part of it's in the county, part of it's with us, part of it's with parks. And so it's getting everyone together to figure it out, because we can't dig up county roads and make repairs to their infrastructure in their roads without some arrangement. And what is interesting is we own probably 7 to 8% of the total storm water infrastructure in the district, and the county transportation department probably owns the largest portion of the stormwater infrastructure because it comes along with the roads. So it is that any solution requires multiple parties coming to the table.
Thank you very much. Karen, you said you had a question you wanted to ask at the very end.
Well, to Alexa. Alexa, did I hear you say that you are a Jennings Lodge resident or an Oak Grove resident?
Possibly.
You're not sure? Because we would record you as a Jennings Lodge resident if you really were, in addition to your job. So
I am a Jennings Lodge resident, yes.
Okay, you're gonna own up to it. Okay.
I will own up to it.
Jennings Lodge resident.
All right,
Don't come and find me.
That's not why I asked, so don't worry. So while I'm asking that question,
yes.
Angie is now with us. Angie, is Brenda with you too?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'll record that in the attendance. Thank you.
Karen, and I'll also send you the public hearing information to share with your email list as well to the Jennings Lodge CPO.
Great, thank you.
We have to leave this subject pretty quickly. Grover, do you have a brief question?
No, it's not a question. I want to give kudos to the Oak Lodge Water and for them taking the lead on the Boardman Arista piece. I happened to watch part of that going on, and our street is like, it's graffiti all over there showing where every line and pipe and whatever comes from. So I'm looking forward to some good activity to watch as time unfolds. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Last question, Yusiri Gatiman.
Hi, yeah. Regarding stormwater management, in the previous notes for the Water Bureau or the Water Authority or Oak Lodge Water, you guys were talking about potentially doing something for their Water Bureau. And they have given credits for disconnecting your spouts off of your house. Is that something that's going to be brought up again due to helping alleviate the expense of stormwater management, or considered again?
So Downspout disconnection program?
Yes, and credits towards the people paying for the water by not taking the water off of their property and putting it into the storm system.
Sarah Jo?
So I know that that is a program that the city of Portland has, but we haven't got that program at the moment. So I would need to talk with Lara to see if that is something that is currently being thought about. But as far as I know, that isn't a program that we currently have in place at the moment.
Boy, it would be great to have it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have to move. Linda, I realize I took away your chance. You have an amendment you wanted to offer.
I do, and I was not going to let you get too far into the evening without bringing it up. First of all, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
It's just a quick business or housekeeping motion For the treasurer to do our business, US Bank actually requires that we have minutes stating by name who that treasurer is. So I would like to move that Pat Reinhardt be formally named as treasurer of the JLCPO, and that myself, Linda Newman, be the alternate. And I would appreciate a second on that.
Second.
Any questions? And I think we can call for a vote.
We can call for a vote.
Yes.
You want to launch a poll?
Sure. Except, I'm sorry, now that I'm no longer co-host, Jane, would you launch that first poll?
Yes, although I'm happy to send it back to you. Oddly enough, I am not seeing that I can go back to those earlier polls. So I'm going to co-host myself if that's possible.
That was the first poll.
Oh, there we go.
Yay, thank you, Ed.
You are in this space and you can subtly exert some power over your environment and do that in a way. So that was, I mean, I have no idea what exactly happened on the thing. I should say there could be other narratives, and it would be interesting because I also was on a flight recently, but was next to like the quintessential white couple that were.
Will everyone please vote?
All this other stuff, you know, it's just, yeah.
Who is
And-
that?
and-
Would somebody
and they
turn
followed
off
all
their
those
chat?
rules that white people follow. And I think I had some, you know, a different awareness of that than I normally would have. So,
I don't know who that is.
Hope it's not me.
Will everyone please
No.
vote?
It's from someone named Cameron, was through Cameron's feed. I'm not able to access that poll even though it shows on my screen. I don't know how anybody else is doing.
And I don't seem to be able to vote.
No, I
Me either.
could, that
I
was
can't
a
vote.
0-0 poll. I mean, that was a final vote, 0-0.
Somebody already passed it by the vote to the results. So can you launch it again?
No.
I must have done something wrong. Let me try one more.
You can also vote via the chat, a point that Karen made early on. Should we just do that?
And we can also do a quick roll call. I have everyone's names.
Let's do a quick roll call.
All righty, Louise. How do you vote?
She votes yes.
And Lisa
Yes.
and Steve Berliner
Yes.
and Karen Bjorklund votes yes. Grover,
Yes.
Jan,
Yes.
Virginia,
Yes.
Leanna,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Jane.
Yes. And then I have a point of order.
Okay, Linda,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Kay,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Musiri.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's everyone.
Thank you.
Does Ed vote as the chair?
No, he can't. You remember, he can only vote when there's a tie. So you're right. I called Ed's name, but I should not have.
And I answered automatically. You have me under your power, Karen. So, and thank you very much for the presentation by the Oak Lodge Water System. You can stay around if you wish. Let's move on to our next item, which is the middle housing proposal. We have Martha Fritzie and Ellen Rogland here. Who wants to start?
I will. So, hi, thank you for having me. I've seen a few of these faces before, and I think I may have presented this topic a while back at this meeting, but I am going to share a brief PowerPoint presentation with some information about where we are on our middle housing implementation. Hopefully has some good pretty pictures in there that'll keep you awake. And then I'm happy to field questions as time allows. I will try to get through this as quickly as possible because I think we're running a little behind, but we'll see. I tend to talk in great volumes and very quickly, so I'll do my best. Okay, so here we are. I already said what we're talking about. We're talking about House Bill 2001 implementation primarily. House Bill 2001, for those of you who are not familiar with it, was a piece of legislation out of the 2019 legislature that requires certain jurisdictions, the urban unincorporated county area being one of them, requires us to allow duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters, collectively known as middle housing, in urban single-family neighborhoods. There is a firm deadline for this. The county and actually a number of the cities in the area as well have until June 30th of this year to either adopt their own code amendments that are consistent with the state's regulations to allow this middle housing, or to use the state's middle housing model code. If a jurisdiction, including ours, does not adopt either of those things by June 30th, 2022, the middle housing model code will be imposed on them anyway. So we in Clackamas County are looking at making our own zoning code amendments to comply with this. It does incorporate some pieces from the middle housing model code, but there are a number of reasons that I won't get into right now why we are not just simply saying, okay, let's use the model code. We're weaving all of this into our own zoning code right now, and that's what we're talking about. So here are some happy little pictures of middle housing. I like to show pictures and sort of to visualize and start thinking about really what we're talking about. These are some pictures of duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And these are dwellings, a grouping of 2, 3, or 4 dwellings that are all on one lot. So this is all one lot. They could be an internal conversion, an existing single family house that's converted into 2, 3, 4 units, or it could be new construction, side by side, stacked, however. Townhouses and cottage clusters are a little bit different. Townhouses look a little bit like some of the pictures up above, but townhouses are each on their own lot. This is currently allowed in the county in certain areas, and I think we're all pretty familiar with what townhouses or row houses look like. Cottage clusters look something like this, or they can look something like this. It's on one lot, and it's a series of smaller homes surrounding some common area, a courtyard. And in fact, a courtyard is required in a cottage cluster. So these are the types of housing that would be allowed, that will be allowed starting this summer under these new middle housing regulations. Where are they going to be allowed? Well, it's the urban unincorporated area inside the urban growth boundary in all of these zoning districts listed over here, which are all of our single family zoning districts. The areas are identified in yellow. And I told you that a lot of the other cities have to do this exact same thing. Every city that's up on here in gray also has to do the exact same thing that we are doing here in these yellow areas, with the exception of Johnson City. And so I just threw together a little zoomed in map for you with Jennings Lodge CPO boundaries on it, so you can get a better sense for within your area what properties this would apply to. It's a good portion of your area, and these are all the single family residential zones. So how do we get there? Well, you know, this project has been going on for quite some time. And when we started thinking about how we were going to incorporate middle housing into our zoning code, it became apparent that there are a lot of things that we have no control over. The state law is very prescriptive. However, there are some things that we do have some limited control over, and we wanted to be able to make our own decisions, which is part of the reason we're not using the model code. And to do that, we engaged in a fairly robust outreach effort that's been really going on since last spring. We had a series of sort of small discussion group meetings. We had a consultant that helped us facilitate those to reach out to communities in 5 different languages. We actually held the meetings in Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Spanish, as well as English, really to try to reach out to communities and community members that typically aren't engaged in processes like these. We've done a number of presentations to CPOs, other interested groups. Actually gave a presentation to your local Kiwanis Club about a week or so ago, and it was really fun. We had 2 online surveys that you all may have participated in. In total, we had over 860 responses. I do understand maybe it's some of the same people responding to both, but that's still a pretty good response for an online survey. And we in fact got responses in 5 different languages. We held a virtual Q&A session in February, sent out over 21,000 postcards inviting people, and only had 42 attendees, which surprised me a little bit. But it was a great meeting. There was a lot of people there asking really good questions, and hopefully they got them all answered. And of course, we have a webpage. We've done social media posts. We have an interested parties list of over 450 names that we've been sending information out to. And that's actually quite a bit of outreach for us on a planning project. This planning project has been complicated trying to fit this into our code. And it's just been complicated to explain. And I guess before I leave this slide, the general takeaway that I get from all this outreach is that reactions to this are very mixed. There are people who really love it and think this is a fabulous idea. And there, of course, are lots of concerns as well. And so we're trying to weigh those concerns and that enthusiasm and balance what we've gotten as far as feedback and incorporate that into our code amendments. So what are those code amendments? Well, there's a lot of them. I will not get into lots of nitty-gritty detail about it because I don't have 4 hours of your time today. So just generally, the ZDO is the Zoning and Development Ordinance. There's a number of sort of big things that our code amendments are going to do. One is, of course, to allow middle housing in the applicable zones. But with that, it also identifies what development standards are going to apply. By and large, the same development standards that apply to a single family dwelling are going to apply to this middle housing for the most part. And I'm talking about setbacks from property lines. I'm talking about height restrictions. There's a 35-foot height limit in these zoning districts. It's not going to change for middle housing. It's just the same. I'm talking about the amount of lot that can be covered by structures is the same for single family. There are some unique requirements for some of the middle housing. We in fact created a whole new section in our zoning code for it. It has to do with triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters. We were allowed to have some specific design standards related to entry orientation, driveways, courtyard sizes for cottage clusters, things like that that are unique to those middle housing types. And we did incorporate some of those into our zoning code because we felt it was important that this type of housing is different in a lot of ways from single family dwellings. And so having some of these design standards would be appropriate. The one thing you'll see up here is minimum lot sizes also. For triplexes, quadplexes, and cottage clusters, there is a minimum lot size in order to be able to develop those middle housing types. The minimum lot size is not very large. It's 5,000 square feet for a triplex and 7,000 square feet for a quadplex or cottage cluster. That is the largest minimum lot size that we are allowed to establish under the state's rules. And we heard pretty loud and clear that we should do that. And so those are some of the general standards. They're all woven into the zoning code and hopefully made very clear. There's no guarantee it's perfect. Also, things like parking requirements. There are parking requirements for middle housing. The middle housing rules don't require us to have parking requirements, but they allow us to. But if we're going to have off-street parking requirements, we cannot require more than 1 space per dwelling unit, which is what, again, we heard loud and clear from all of our outreach and discussions with decision makers. We heard that is what that is what we should do. So that's what the code says. which means then, of course, if someone's building a triplex on their 5,000 square foot lot, they have to meet the setbacks, they have to meet the lot coverage standards, they have to provide parking offsite. And so not every single lot out there is really going to realistically be able to be developed with some of these different housing types. And that's fine. They may be developed, they may not. And I think on that point, a point that I really did want to bring up, which of course I forgot earlier, is that, you know, we're talking about areas in the urban area that already are largely developed. There's a lot of single family development and other development in these neighborhoods. And so the expectation and the expectation from the state and the expectation from the county is that this infill development is going to progress fairly slowly. We have a few people who've been knocking on our door and waiting to develop, but I mean, really a handful in the urban area. And as this goes on longer, there may be more and more interest, but this is expected to be a fairly slow rate of infill and or redevelopment, unless there are some large vacant lots that we're not aware of. There's a few out there, and those might develop with middle housing. But the other important thing to keep in mind is that single family homes are still allowed. You could build a single family home. You just also now have an option of building more than just a single family home. Or if you own a single family home, you have the option to convert it to a plex, or to convert it to townhomes, or make a cottage cluster on your property. And so it does provide more options and more opportunities. So some other things that our zoning code amendments are doing are kind of related to middle housing, but sometimes not. But they are some things that we as staff have wanted to clean up in our zoning code, and or just it doesn't make sense anymore to have some of these standards now that we have to do these certain things with middle housing. One of them is removing a 3,000 square foot minimum lot size that we have for residential development. And what that means is, regardless of your zoning, if you have a legal lot that existed prior to zoning, you can build on it. But currently, if that lot that you have that existed prior to zoning was less than 3,000 square feet, you aren't able to build on it. And so there's really, we honestly have no knowledge as to why that was in our zoning code. I don't know if there's any of these old platted subdivisions in the Jennings Lodge area, but we do have some in the urban area that have old lots that were 25 by 100. And so people have had to buy more than one and consolidate them and do other sorts of land divisions in order to develop at all. So that doesn't necessarily make sense to us. And as we were reading through the middle housing rules, it became apparent the way they were written that you actually have to allow a duplex on those. And so it no longer makes sense to not allow a single family home if we have to allow a duplex. That was a really long way of trying to explain that, because it's a little bit nuanced. It has nothing to do really with, it doesn't change zoning or anything like that. We are also proposing to amend the lot coverage standards in some of our single family residential zones. This is not required. This is something that we're doing to try to streamline permitting and make things easier. Currently, in those zones listed there, you can cover 40% of your lot with buildings, and we're proposing to change that to 50. There are all the other zones where House Bill 2001 applies have a 50% lot coverage. There's also exceptions in the R7 through R30 that allow 50% or more, and just rather than have exceptions and to go through that process and try to figure out if somebody qualifies for these exceptions, we decided to propose just to change it all so it's the same across the board. And two more things very quickly. Middle housing land divisions. So as if it wasn't complicated enough for us to fit middle housing into our zoning codes, the legislature in 2021 came out with Senate Bill 458, which essentially said, okay, jurisdictions, so those of you who have to comply with House Bill 2001 now have to allow properties that are developed with that middle housing that's compliant with House Bill 2001. You have to allow those properties to then divide, suit smaller. So in other words, you you are allowed to build a triplex, but now you have to allow that property to be divided into 3 lots. A large push, I think, for this bill was from the home builders, because it's about affordable home ownership. I mean, and that's one of the reasons that House Bill 2001 was passed, was to create more choices, more types of units, more variety, more sizes, and hopefully more naturally affordable housing. And so middle housing land divisions has become a part of this code package as well. And then finally, this was sort of a last minute insertion. We have some manufactured home standards that are specific only to manufactured homes that are being placed on individual lots. This doesn't have to do with parks, including a minimum size for the dwelling and certain design standards that are specific. And those, if the governor signs a bill that's on her desk right now, is my understanding from this year's legislative session, we're no longer going to be allowed to have those standards. And so we decided just to put this into our package now, since we have the opportunity. And so that is all wrapped in. It's a lot. We're touching 21 sections of our zoning code, which has like maybe 80 sections. There's a lot of changes. It's pretty complicated. We've done our best to incorporate all of this. And then, of course, some of you might be aware, we also have a comprehensive plan, which is our overall policy, goal and policy document that the zoning code implements. And so we had to do some pretty substantial changes in our housing chapter, chapter 6 of our comprehensive plan, in part because it's so outdated, and in part because it really just needed to be reworked to make sense to enable this middle housing to be incorporated. And then there were some policies that needed to be changed in some of our other sections. So this link down here has each of the sections of our zoning code and our comp plan that are being that are proposed for amendment under this package. And they each have a little summary attached to the beginning. So that is my attempt to explain what is happening in this section to make it a little bit easier for people, hopefully. And you can look at those through this link here. We have a couple of public hearings coming up here really quickly. First, the Planning Commission has a public hearing on March 28th. They hold their hearings in the evening. It starts at 6:30 p.m. You will hear me talk again. And then, of course, there are opportunities to provide written and oral testimony at that hearing, or you can send written testimony to me. My email is all over the webpage, which I will which is actually on the next slide. I can also put it in the chat if you need it. So the Planning Commission is having their first hearing on March 28th. If they cannot get through all of this in one hearing, we will have a hearing also on April 11th. The Planning Commission then makes a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, who ultimately make the decision about the package of code amendments. Their hearings start at 10 a.m. The first one of their hearings is scheduled for April 27th. That's a Wednesday. And then we have some other dates held if they need to continue that. We will be accepting written testimony all the way up through the hearing. They will accept oral testimony at the hearing. I can tell you the Planning Commission is virtual. The Board of County Commissioners is going to be hybrid, so you can come in person or you can do it via Zoom. And as promised, we have a web page that's here. It has a lot more background and information about House Bill 2001. It has links to the meetings. It will have links to audio from meetings and video. It will have links to various packages of amendments as things change. And then just to sort of put in a plug for this, I'm probably going to be coming back and talking to you again. This House Bill 2001 implementation is part of a larger housing project that we're working on. So we recently made some changes that affected some of the zones along the corridor of McLaughlin, some of the commercial zones. These changes affect the single family zones that sort of straddle those. We're really making a lot of changes to our zoning code to affect housing options, housing choices, housing supply, housing affordability, and it's touching nearly everybody's zoning district at this point, at least in the urban area. And so I just want to throw out there that this is part of a much larger project. That website is listed up there as well. And we're happy to continue to have your participation in all of our housing work.
Martha,
That's it, I'm done.
Martha,
Yes.
excellent presentation. I think I asked you when you presented this at another group about the tree canopy. Is there anything in this that has to do with presentation of the tree canopy?
Well, yes and no. So no, there is nothing different than what exists in our zoning code right now. And the tree canopy, preservation of open space, preservation of yards and things like that, green space, gardens, that is all that is something that we have heard consistently through our public outreach. And so that was the reason we made some of the decisions we made about the code amendments. But making any changes to our current tree code is going to be a different, much more complicated process. I think you I know, Ed, are aware that all of our standards for housing under state law need to be clear and objective. And our tree code right now and tree preservation efforts are largely not written to be clear and objective, and they need some work. And we know that, and that's on our short list. That's not something that we felt we could tackle at the same time as the middle housing code amendments, because this was big and complicated enough, and it really is sort of its own entity. So our goal with this was to not make that any worse when it came to tree preservation or the tree code, but all of this development would be subject to the exact same rules that everything is right now.
Thank you. Greg, Grover, you got a question.
Yes, I do. Well, first of all, great presentation, Martha. You always do a good job, and I appreciate it. Two, I very much in favor of increasing our available housing. So that is the opening statement. But I also have a concern about this being an unfunded mandate, in the sense that if we actually go and have the infill come in, we happen to be in an area that is distinctly lacking sufficient urban services. And in House Bill 2001, in plain English on the first page, it says this does not apply to unincorporated areas that lack sufficient urban services. We lack parks, we lack open space, we lack transportation, and we lack mass transportation to, and others are debatable. Thank goodness our water and sewer are in great shape. But that is being totally ignored. I've heard the same story. Well, that got lost somewhere in special codes or whatever. No, it's in plain English that you can't mandate putting aggravation of infill, which will cause even to be more lacking. And I don't know how that's being addressed.
Wonderful.
Well, I can tell you, and you're right, the language is a little bit different between House Bill 2001 and the way that it came out in the rules. And so the rules have defined sufficient, well, there's sufficient infrastructure and there's sufficient urban services.
That's what
and
we're talking about.
That's the term that was in House Bill 2001.
Yep.
And so it said that it doesn't apply to unincorporated areas of counties that are not provided with sufficient urban services as defined, and it sends you to a different statute, which has a list of urban services.
And all the ones that I just mentioned are on that list.
Right, but then in the rules, it further says, and I'm looking over here at my other screen, I'm not.
For sure.
Sufficient urban services means areas that are within an urban service district boundary. And so it doesn't talk about the quality or quantity of services. It basically implies that you have access to some services. And so I think that's where the disconnect is that you're seeing. And I don't have a great answer for you, except that I can tell you through the rulemaking and the way that this is worded that it's extremely hard to argue that there aren't sufficient urban services in areas where there are urban service districts. And all of our
Say
urban
that part
service-
again. I didn't
hard to
understand
argue
that.
that it's hard to argue under the way that this is worded that if they're defining sufficient urban services as you are within an urban service district, it's very hard to argue that, well, no, you don't have sufficient urban services. And so it's not a quality or quantity argument anymore. Where it does get to that type of an argument is where the rules say that middle housing has to have sufficient infrastructure.
Right,
And
but
it
we're not talking
specifically
infrastructure.
says infrastructure, sewer, water, storm
Right.
drainage, and a minimal amount of transportation services.
Correct. So anyway, House Bill 2001 couldn't be any clearer, and it sounds like some backroom conversation sort of invalidated what in plain English. And so I don't know where to go, and I know you can't fix it, but it's not okay because we are going to have less and less and less sufficiency because it's unfunded to be able to make up the difference. I'm done. You can't fix it, but I go on record, and I will continue to go on record that that's an end run that. About trust, not you didn't do it, about trusting our government. Well, you can't do that from Salem and change all the rules. I'm done.
Thank you, Grover.
Welcome.
There are several questions in the chat.
Missouri has his hand up.
Hi, sorry, I put a piece of tape over my head. Hi, Martha. I know this is outside of the purview of House Bill 2001, but in your presentation, you said that there's additional work being done to review the zoning. So my question is, in that work, has anyone considered whether R1 zoned properties should be allowed to build additional dwelling units or mother-in-law suites? I know if you're zoned, I think a 2.5 or greater, you can, but allowing that leniency for those zoned R1 to do so, if the goal is to increase density of living and to allow more people to live and have access to housing, I think that would be beneficial moving forward, but I'm not sure if that's been considered or has been brought up. Thanks.
So we don't actually have an R1 zone in the unincorporated area.
I'm in unincorporated. I'm pretty sure I'm R1. Because I haven't not received any flyers for House Bill 2001. I live in Jennings on River and Meldrum. Yeah.
So if you want to send me your address, I can look that up and see. We don't have an R1 zone. And so I don't know what zone you're in, but if you're in one of these zones, I apologize for not sending you a postcard.
Yeah, do you have a pen? I can give it to you. I don't.
Yeah.
People can look my name up on the white pages or whatever, so it's not secret. Yeah. 18904 Southeast River Road.
Okay, I will check it out.
Yep. I'll send you an email too with that question also, but thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Do you want me to read the chat questions out loud? It says Martha indicated that a cottage cluster on a single lot rather than separate properties as described for townhomes. Does this mean an individual single-family residence could add multiple ADUs and have that considered a cottage cluster? So yes and no. That you wouldn't be adding ADUs to your property, you would be developing a cottage cluster. And so in the cottage cluster rules, it does have an allowance for keeping the existing single-family dwelling, and then you can develop the cottage cluster. It needs to, the houses, the placement, the setbacks, the amount of parking, the amount of courtyard, all have to meet the standards for the cottage cluster, but yes, you can leave the existing home there. And then tree canopy. In the unincorporated Oak Grove Jennings Lodge area, stormwater disposal is typically required on site. Is this possible to do with smaller lots, and is this addressed in the new regulations? Well, I actually was really glad that I caught the tail end of your previous presentation. I kind of wish I had heard the whole thing because stormwater is something that we have grappled with a little bit partly or mostly because I personally am a planner and am still working to understand how this all works through development. And so my understanding is that if you're developing less than 5,000 square feet of impervious surface on your property, you are subject to the plumbing code, and the intent is to handle all the stormwater on site. There are instances in which you're allowed to tie into the stormwater system. This assumes, of course, you have a functioning one, which I'm pretty sure there are some older roads out there that don't. So that's my understanding. That's something that's reviewed during the building permit process, and it would have to meet whatever standards are set forth in the plumbing code. I don't know if I don't know how that looks on a smaller site. I guess if you can't do it on a smaller site, you either need to not develop as much on your site, or you need to figure out if there's any alternatives that would be allowed under those specific codes. If you're developing more than 5,000 square feet of, this is impermeable surface, it's not the structure size, which is how I look at things, then it's required to go through, you're required to have an engineered stormwater management plan. I'm probably not using the exact right terms. And that is reviewed by the service district, and you are required to look at sort of upstream and downstream impacts, but that doesn't kick in until you get to sort of these little bit larger developments. So I'm not sure who asked that question, but hopefully that helps.
I think we have reached the end of this presentation. Martha, thank you very much. You've done a great job as always.
Thank you for having me. Oh, let me put my email address in here so you can, let's see. You can go ahead, I'm just typing.
Okay, well, next we have Bob Knorr from Clackamas County is going to talk about the improvement on Jennings Avenue from McLaughlin to Oatfield. Bob, go ahead.
I was wondering if I could share the screen with you all. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Let's see here. Great. Hello and good evening. I'm Bob Knorr. I'm the county's engineering project manager for the upcoming Jennings Avenue project between McLaughlin Boulevard and Oatfield Road. On behalf of the county's Department of Transportation and Development, I'd like to express our thanks and appreciation for allowing us another opportunity to provide you an update of the project status. As an update to the project schedule, the county team is progressing on the design, and I recently received the 95% design submittal. I would like you to know that we are doing as much as we can and pushing as hard as we can to get the project ready to solicit bids for construction. The project has had a few challenges along the way. This includes a large number of right-of-way files, and now the county is seeing bids for construction substantially increase over the last few months. Of course, many of you have been anticipating the start of construction and completion of this project for some time. In addition to finalizing the design, we're in the process of completing the project right-of-way phase. We've had some challenges in the right-of-way process, notwithstanding the many right-of-way files and a shortage in county right-of-way staffing. We are worried about bidding the project in May as originally planned. There are substantially higher costs due to extremely high oil prices, higher material costs, and effects from delays in the supply chain, which are increasing construction costs and bid prices. We will continue to monitor the bid environment this spring. Construction is anticipated to take approximately 1 year based on our latest projections. It is possible the actual length of construction is less, but this will depend on how many construction crews the contractor allocates to the project. We understand individual concern for delays in the project, and again, we are working and pushing as hard as we can to get this project out to construction. You might see there in this slide, the timeline, it kind of outlines basically the same as what I've just spoken about. Does anyone have any questions about what's shown there, the design, the right-of-way, and the construction?
Bob, are you going to be able to describe the work you're actually going to do?
Yeah, I'll do that on the next slide here a little bit. This is a graphic just showing the basic location, which you all know is between McLaughlin and Oatfield Road along Jennings. Candy Lane Elementary School in the middle. And Boardman Wetland, you've got the Boardman Creek running kind of in a southeast to northwest direction toward the wetland. This is a little bit of a graphic our consultant put together for us here. I just wanted to briefly show you. It shows the Boardman Creek crossing of Jennings Avenue, and it shows sidewalk on the north side, bike lanes on both sides. This particular location shows the existing parking strip or area for parking, but we are not adding parking to the project per se. What we will be doing. The project's main objective is to improve safety and connectivity. And we're doing this by putting a 6-foot sidewalk on the north side and bike lanes on both sides. There's also the 11-foot travel lanes included. We're also adding marked crosswalks. And you may have heard that we're moving the pedestrian crossing at Rose Street to Portland Avenue. I think it's more centrally located. It lines up with the new pedestrian access trail to the school. And in that location, we plan to put the rapid rectangular flashing beacon. You may have seen those before, and then some speed radar feedback signs. Finally, we're planning to put, in addition to those other elements, a new stormwater facility, including constructing a bioswale mentioned there in a detention area just upstream of the crossing, Boardman Creek crossing of Jennings Avenue. You may have seen, if you visited our website, this roll map. It's a little bit hard to see here, and this is more just to kind of display what it looks like. But if you do go to our website, you can download this roll map to kind of get an overview of the project from one end to the other. Our outreach program has, well, we've been reaching out to you on occasion for the last year or more. We've set up the website, and we appreciate you allowing us to join in your meeting tonight. We've been sending out social media and email. I've been communicating with some of you and through mailings and otherwise, and you're always welcome to send me an email or call me on the phone. A little bit about funding. Current project estimate is about $5.5 million. It's made up of $1.5 million from the Oregon Department of Transportation, about $3 million in federal aid through the Surface Transportation Program, and the remaining county road funds of around $1 million. And the last slide shows you a little bit, just basically how to contact me and our website as well. Thank you.
There's one question in chat.
Let's see, it says here, is there any way we can get some potholes repaired on Jennings while we are waiting for the project to begin? That's a great question. And we always recommend folks, if they want to inquire about that, is to contact our roads and maintenance department. You'll get there faster than I will, but I can call them on your behalf. Next question is, what is the impact on traffic flow through the area during construction? We will be enacting what we call rolling shutdowns. The impact will be that lanes will always be open so that you can move freely through there, but you will have to stop on occasion and take turns if they shut down one lane, and then move beyond once that work's done. So
There's also an answer from Cameron on potholes. Somebody might want to read.
sure, I can. Cameron mentioned here that potholes can definitely be filled prior to this project starting. Please report potholes and other road concerns to our transportation maintenance team by calling. The number there is 503-557-6391 or emailing roadconcerns@clackamas.us.
Any other questions?
Sure. Thanks, Cameron.
Bob, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bringing everybody up to date. I assume you will come back and you will answer questions as the project begins. For all of our sake, I hope the price of oil drops dramatically before you have to go out to bid.
Right. And, you know, it is a pleasure to join you tonight. It's a really easy way to do it. And if you want to invite us back, we're happy to come back. Otherwise, I'll see you out there, or you can call me on the phone.
There is another question in chat.
Great. What about Jennings to River Road work? I'm not aware. The best folks to contact about future projects would be our planning staff or our public government affairs staff.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Absolutely.
We do have Ellen Rogalin in the meeting who works with transportation. Maybe Ellen can take a shot at answering that. Ellen, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry, I am here. It's funny because we're just finishing up our 5-year capital improvement program projects list, which is the board is scheduled to approve on Thursday. And I will check on that and see if that's in there, and if it's not, when it is scheduled. And we'll get back to you.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Grover, I think you're up.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. And I will be brief. Well, I actually want to really give you all the short version. Many of you know for years, I've been involved in the library and the parks and the CPO. And a lot's going on currently around the Concord property and the library. So what I want to tell you first is the task force has been working for 3.5 years now, and we hit a road bump and have looked at what Plan B is. And in the process of looking for what Plan B is, the various groups of community members that are involved in evaluating that have all been polled and talked and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to give you the short version. The Library Advisory Board has concurred that it is appropriate to have the library be a freestanding building on the Concord site. The Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force has come to the same conclusion, as well as the North Clackamas Parks District Advisory Committee. And as a side note, so has the Oak Grove Community Council. All reached that same conclusion. And I would like to tell you a few more things, answer any questions you might have, but I would like us to have a proposed motion that fits that same vein that I'd like us to be able to weigh in. And as an FYI, myself and some other people are going to be at the Board of County Commissioners session on Thursday, and we'd love to be able to report the results from all of those groups, including our own group, as far as supporting that standalone building. And the main reason that there is the standalone is there became a funding issue, and the complication of what's in the parks and what's in the library funding made it clear that we can move forward and have a beautiful library and have it be separate. And county commissioners are leaning strongly in favor of doing that. And but they want to hear one voice. And so that's why we're assembling all these one voices, and we'd like to have your voice fit that. So on that same note, because we're going, I know that some of you remember back when we were about to lose our library and we had cards that everybody signed. So we got 300 signatures and 30 people went to the county commissioner's office to meeting. And 10 days later, they changed something they absolutely swore they would never change. So having people show up makes a difference. It really amplifies you don't have to speak, just being there. So if you could be there for the Thursday morning meeting in person. Yes, you could do it online too, but it's harder to identify you. But anyway, so that's just a request. So you want to see the motion, or you want to have questions first?
Why don't you offer the motion, Reverend Grover?
Pardon? What was that?
Why don't you offer the motion?
Okay, good. It's in the chat and I will read it to you as well. And if somebody wants to share a screen, I can show it on the screen, but it's in the chat and it says, the Jennings Lodge CPO recommends that the Oak Lodge Library be freestanding. It should be developed immediately based on further input from the community about style, location, sustainability, and energy efficiency levels. There should also be immediate adoption of the park design, which complements the library. So, and you can see it in the chat, as I said, and if it's important, somebody could share a screen with me and I get me on share screen and I could put the same words up, or I can read it again.
Are you offering that as a motion?
Yes, I am, and I'm looking for a second.
I am happy to second. This is Linda.
Who gets credit for second?
Doesn't matter, as long as it gets seconded.
Yeah.
Hey, give me a name.
Linda was loudest.
Linda?
I'll second it,
Linda's
Pat.
the second.
I'll do it, Pat.
Based on our earlier experience with the polls, Karen, I think you better call the roll.
Okay.
Do you want to have discussion before you
Yeah.
call for?
Are there any questions about what's happening, not happening, or you want to do the poll first and then get, or the roll call, and then I'll answer anything you want to know?
Does anyone want to have any discussion before we call the roll on this motion?
Yes, Steve.
Can anyone else see it in chat?
Oh,
Any of you? I can.
you mean I failed to
Oh,
drop it in
okay.
chat?
Grover, you can probably screen share.
I mean, it sounded good, but I wouldn't mind reviewing it once. It's a
Go-
little, you know.
Okay.
Grover, try screen sharing. Just click on share screen.
All right, wait a minute. Let me get
Bottom
down
of the
here. And where is share screen? Oh, share screen. Whoa. There you go.
There you go.
Steve, do you want Grover to
keep
read
it up
that
there,
again
Mike.
while you're looking at it?
Keep it up there. My screen goes completely black when it shifts to full screen. It doesn't have the memory buffer and takes it a moment.
Okay, so the Jennings Lodge CPO recommends that the Oak Lodge Library be freestanding. It should be developed immediately based on further input from the community about style, location, sustainability, and energy efficiency levels. There should also be immediate adoption of the park design, which complements the library.
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
We already have a second for this. Karen, would you?
Yeah, I wrote down Linda as the second because that's who Grover said was the second.
Yes.
Discussion.
Any further discussion?
Jan has her hand up.
Yeah. Unmute. The word immediate, I just want to clarify, because the process is going on to actually design that, where it's going to be, what it's going to be cited. So I'm in favor of this, but I just want to clarify. It says it should be developed immediately based on further input. That input has to happen. So that's the only thing about immediate that causes me.
Okay, can we change the word immediate to concurrent?
Why not just strike the word immediately altogether?
How about it should be immediately developed based on further input? Just reverse the adjective and put it in front of developed. It should be immediately developed.
Well, now, that's not the immediate we're arguing about. It's the one about the park. Yes, no?
It's just the word that, as long as
Which
you all.
one? It's on there twice, Jen.
Yes, it is.
Paragraph.
It should be
one are you
developed
referring to?
immediately. I think it should be developed first based on those things. And it should be.
First is too vague.
Okay.
Don't know what you're talking about.
Fine,
I
as
take a
long as the
stab at,
people who are voting for it
I like
understand that
concurrent
it's a
better
process.
than immediate, because nothing can be done immediate.
Right, the library and the park should be developed concurrently is all I was,
Okay.
Jane has
Or-
her hand up.
yeah, I'm gonna take another stab because I think I'm tracking with Jan that it says the library should be developed immediately, but we need this further input about, future stuff done in terms of style, location, sustainability, and energy efficiency. And I think what you want is nothing to be lagging. And if it was concurrent and immediate, if both the library part of it and the, details of the style, location, all that kind of stuff, if they were concurrent and immediate, does that not make it clearer to what you're intending?
that would be fine. I just don't want the county commission to say, take the one you've got, no matter
Yeah.
what. They said immediate, get it done. I want this to be, people to be aware that it is a process and we're doing it as quickly as and appropriately as we can.
So is there a better way than immediate and concurrent?
No, I think that's fine.
Steve has his hand up.
Steve,
I thought that was fine at the moment. I don't think there's a problem with that part of it as now, but in the middle paragraph, develop generally refers to site development on the ground work. Do we need a plan? Do we need a final? If you're basing it on style, location, sustainability, we need the plans.
right. Well, let me address that.
Plans.
Let me address that. They don't have building drawings yet. They don't have any of that stuff. And I'm just watching the same process with Milwaukee Bay Park. They have started, but then there's 6 to 12 months worth of design work, but they've already started. The project is underway, but they're still doing design work and bidding and all that stuff. So your point is correct, but.
Well, you often start at, I think we have some, I don't know if our county experts are still with us, like Ellen.
Nope.
You often don't start until you have 30% or 50% final design. Maybe
But we'd
more.
have to figure out what start means, because I'll use the county's example when they were going to build the library in Gladstone. As soon as they began the design building plans, they considered that start. They weren't in design, they were actually working on the building plans. So
I wonder if what we want is to develop as soon as possible based on, or is that too weak for you, Grover?
That sounds good.
sounds pretty weak to me, but
Yeah,
okay, should be
begun.
developed.
Okay. All right, how about this? It should be begun immediately. Because I heard what you said, Grover, that there's lots of pieces down the way, but I just don't want people to say, we said immediately, and by God, this is taking too long.
I have my hand up.
Yes.
I think the issue is that the idea is the library should be freestanding and the work on it should be begun now and not wait for a plan for the community center. I think
Correct.
that's where this came from.
Yep.
So the idea is that this all needs to be reworded just a little bit differently. Now I only see part of it on the screen. So that the planning for the library should begin now based on blah, 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 all these other things, and not wait for it to be part of a community center package.
And that's what I said, the planning.
Whatever way you'd like to say that, that's the crux of the issue as I understood you to describe it, Grover.
I'm sorry, Aaron, plans should be developed immediately, something of that nature. Based on.
For a standalone library.
Right.
Well, it's already in the first section that's got the standalone part. So plan should be begun development immediately. We go back to leave development in. Plans
Yes.
should begun development How's that? Anybody got a thought about that? I'm always ready for thoughts.
I think you're making it more complicated all the time.
Yeah, it's not reading too smooth at the moment.
I got it.
I think you.
How about this idea that wordsmithing as a group, and there's like 20 some of us on here, not an easy thing to do. So what if we vote on the basic concept?
Yep.
And then let the wordsmiths carry that out, as we often do. We often instruct our CPO chair to create something that expresses our wishes. So what if we have a motion that expresses the wishes and isn't the exact wording? And we're going to leave that up to Grover and whoever he works with to get that exact wording by Thursday.
Grover, do you want to withdraw your original motion?
And replace it with what, Ed?
Library project.
3 bullets of what
concept.
the statement needs to have.
Karen appears to be running the meeting, so why don't you adopt what she has told you to adopt?
I did a chat on that.
I actually, Ed, I'm going to go a slightly different route. The same motion, and I'm just amending that and minor wordsmithing for clarity will happen after the fact.
Right.
I'm good with that. I did a chat on a possible reword.
Okay.
Linda, would you withdraw your second, please?
No, I didn't withdraw mine. I just amended it.
What is your original, what is the motion you are asking the group to vote on, Grover?
Those words that I read with the caveat that and minor wordsmithing for clarity will follow.
Is there a second to that?
I second that.
Second.
Okay, let's call for the motion. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, and I want to note that Greg Smith has now joined us, and this being his 3rd meeting in a row, he is now once again a voting member of the CPO. So he'll be on this list as well. Louise?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Karen is a yes. Grover?
Yes.
Jan?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
Leanna?
2 ayes from this address.
Okay, got it. Angie?
Yes.
Brenda?
Abstain.
Okay. Jane? Jane?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Kay? Are you still with us, Kay? Kevin?
Yes.
Nusiri?
Yes.
And Greg? You on here, Greg?
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, got it. Thank you. The motion does pass.
16 to 2 abstentions. Thank you all. Okay, stop sharing screen. There we go.
Grover, you want me to call you tomorrow so we can put together the final wording and I can email it to you so you'll have it for the county commission?
That'd be great. Can we do it in the morning?
Yes.
Thank you.
Have anything else you want to cover at this point, Grover?
No, we're still waiting to updates. We're still waiting for the naming of what is commonly known as the Borden Wetlands because we're waiting to hear from the tribe. And we are most likely the current plan for the other part of the Concord property is going to be some sort of phased project with the NCPRD staff possibly moving in by July 1 into the building and still running minor programming and keeping working on having more recreational and community activities growing in there, and they will go through whatever staged process of addressing the main building. And I guess the last thing is what we have coming up is I firstly want kudos all around for everybody that helped with this, but since we started in 2019, in May of 2019, we asked the board of directors for the NCPRD to direct that we would redevise the way that NCPRD was run, because we usually typically had 3 votes. So they redesigned it, and we now have proportional with the 4 sub areas of unincorporated and the 1 sub area of the city of Milwaukee. And we had it filled with 11 positions, and it's election time again. So between now and the end of June, we will go through the process in the various sub areas in every one but sub area 2, which is mostly up around the Oak Grove area. There are people whose term is coming to completion, and they need to either reapply, and others can apply. And we have 2 vacancies out in the Sunnyside area. So I'm really encouraging people to have your voices be heard. And if you would like to be on my mailing list, just send me an email at citizengJB@gmail.com, and I will add you to my mailing list if you're not already on it, just to keep you posted on things as they develop. But for me, this is an opportunity for us to become directly involved, being represented after all these years, 30 some odd years of NCPRD, and we now have a voice, and it's changing the direction of NCPRD. And not easy, but it's working, and I'll call it democracy in action. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much, Grover. Greg Smith has joined us. I know I promised Greg some time at the end of the meeting. There were some things he wanted to talk about. So Greg, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry I didn't get on earlier. My computer got locked up, so I'm on my cell phone, unfortunately. So it's I'm not familiar enough with this, but I appreciate the time. I just wanted to share an event that happened. I've been working diligently in the Jennings Lodge, or in the Robin Riviera Property Association on for several years, over 7 years, trying to get our road, our main road, which is a county road, to be, it was originally to be repaved, and it was going to be able to, but it finally, after 5 attempts and coming out saying they were waiting to get us and with a larger project, that's what they kept telling us. Last year I called, and they sent out 3 men with 3 trucks to tell me, with not much explanation other than they're not anticipating doing any work on the road, period. Our road is deteriorated major, and we have had 2 sets of garbage truck services, our own plus an outside one from Gladstone, using our area as a turnaround as well. And it's disintegrated the road, so it's just checkered up, and it's just a really poor road. My big thing with the roads is that Clackamas County appears that there's nothing being done on any of the roads, including ours, except on bike paths. And I'd like to know what the rest of you feel about the roads, because the roads are not only potholes here and there, they're everywhere, even in Gladstone. Arlington is a prime example in a city. The roads are falling apart on Arlington. You can go down and hit ruts. I just had to have my car realigned, my new car, because of the ruts in the road. And they said to me, the roads are definitely causing more and more cars to have to be realigned, and the roads are falling apart. The roads are not a concern, it seems to me, as the county only is concerned about bicycle paths and pedestrian paths. In fact, Oregon City has plans to put a bicycle and a pedestrian path across the Willamette River. If you haven't heard, that is a fact that I've heard, that they're going to put a bicycle path across the Willamette River next to the Arch Bridge in Oregon City. That's another example of putting money in the wrong direction. And that's what I wanted to bring out. You there?
We're here. I was just, is there anything else you wanted to say, Greg?
I just wanted to find out if any of the other people have any concerns about the roads, and I thought it was a poor use of taxpayers' money, road taxpayers' money, coming out and sending 3 guys after I was promised several years that it would be put on, and then finally coming out with 3 guys and 3 trucks. That's poor use of assets. That is an example of wasting our road use tax money.
I don't know if you read the chats, but Ellen Ropeland has just given you her contact information so that she can get you connected to the right person at the county.
Thank you very much on that. I'd like everyone's opinion on what I've already said what my little piece is, but I'd like to hear if anybody else is concerned about not just my road. Let's take Jennings Lodge area as an example. What do you think of the roads and having nothing being done on them other than appears they're made beautiful bike paths on areas around it, but nothing on the main roads, just bike paths. That's why I want to know whatever, is that what the people want to have, is a bike path and no more roads? Because that's what's heading down the road if they don't fix the roads that need to be fixed. And Portland is an example. We are an example. Gladstone's an example. Gresham's an example. I can go through all the different cities that become cities and they're still not maintaining the roads. And so
Greg, I can respond to you from my road. I live on Jennings Avenue and have lived here for 35 plus years. And my biggest concern is pedestrian safety, because on Jennings Avenue, if you try to walk to the bus stop or you try to walk to the trolley trail from Jennings Avenue, you're going to get killed because there is not an adequate sidewalk or even a bike path. I would kill for a bike path right now because the road is just fine. It's pedestrians that are in danger in my area.
I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you one bit. I'm with you 100%. I've lived here 43 years, so I know what you're talking about. I could never argue that point. My point is, I'd like to see both areas, roads repaired and safety measures for people to walk safely along the roads, if that's what they want to do. We need both. I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. I agree with you. I could never agree with you any more than that. I really appreciate your input. That's good to hear, but I agree with you.
Well, we've got some other comments that I'm seeing in the chat. So maybe what we can do is people can put their comments in the chat, and then Ed, could you share the chat with Greg after the meeting?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, because then everybody can put what their thoughts are if they'd like to do that.
I do appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Is there any further business before we adjourn the meeting? Our next meeting will be on June the 28th, unless there's a reason to meet sooner. And that would normally be if it had something to do with zoning. And since we don't have anything at the present time, our plans are to have our next meeting on June 28th at the same time. Jane, thank you very much for your help tonight. And Karen, thank you. I think if we don't have anything more to discuss, we will consider the meeting adjourned right on time. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.